Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, Automated Public Transport, Delivering Sustainable and Smart Mobility. We have a very exciting topic this morning and an excellent high-level panel of speakers. Automated public transport will help the EU deliver on its policy goal of the Green Deal and also serves the digitalisation agenda. It will help to reduce pollution and congestion in urban areas and also improve safety, which are of course crucial issues. We have an excellent high-level panel. We're going to start off in a couple of minutes with Anne-Marie Idrac, who is the French government's representative on automated driving, Dr. Tobias Miethaner, Director for Digital Society at Germany's Transport Ministry, and Joanna Sikowska from the European Commission's DG GROW department. And then they will join us for a panel discussion later on. But now I'm going to hand the floor over to Olivier Lecornec, Chief Technology Officer at Navia, to welcome the speakers.
Good morning. I am Olivier Lecornec, CTO of Navia. Thank you for joining us to this event dedicated to automatic public transport. I would like to thank the panelists who dedicated their precious time for our event. Madam Idrac, Ms. Sikowska, Dr. Miethaner, Mr. Hertug, Mr. Mesgani, Mr. Golewski. The success of an European Green Deal depends on our ability to make the transport system as a whole sustainable and resilient. In line with the EU policy, electrified shuttles level 4 have the potential to render public transport cleaner, safer, sustainable, more efficient and inclusive. Automatic driven system for public transport is a game changer. The use case of the EV shuttles level 4 with a safety driver on board are already on the road today. The EU ecosystem on automatic driving for public transport is a front runner and is demonstrating these advancements all over the world today. At Navia, as I speak, we have 80 units in operation from Florida to Japan. We prove the advance of European technology at the latest Dubai World Autonomous Driving Challenge, winning 2 of the 3 awards. As we say in French and rugby, we need to convert the train. Il faut transformer l'essai, switching from experimentation to commercialization. This is an urgency to structure and open the market with the support of the EU and the state members. That is why we see a need to solve the current EU fragmentations, the lack of harmonized legal framework and type approval at the EU level, as well as the need to trigger our EU industrial policy. But such, we can foster the EU ecosystem to position our industrial competitiveness among the international leaders, to be resilient and to reinforce EU sovereignty, because this is also about artificial intelligence, also 5G leadership, and the smart city of tomorrow. Several actions show that we are almost there with many great advancements. Among them, EU defined sustainable and smart mobility strategy, which has to come with finance, and we see the Biden administration massively investing in this field. Exactly the same in the in Asia. Germany and France released new law on automated driving. They need to be scaled up to EU level. EU working groups are preparing type approval for new vehicle, shuttle, and their virtual driver, which as an EU first could become a standard. Still, full synergy has to be triggered. The present key decision maker will debate on this synergy and what is needed to put in place an harmonized EU action plan. Thank you all and enjoy the debate.
Thanks very much, Olivier. Right, and then let's move on with the next section of the webinar. We have 3 speakers, so I'd like to hand the floor to Anne-Marie Idrac to talk about the French experience and the French plans for the automated driving sector.
French government thinks it is so important to develop automated public and shared mobility services. Public and shared are the words we use in France. The first one, as it was said, is inclusion in the green mood of the European Commission, in which we are very committed. And we think that the split towards the mass and public transport through an improvement of their efficiency and performances and attractivity is important, and then automation can contribute to that. The second point, which is expressed in our recent law on mobility, is that we want to reinforce the power of local authorities and to give them new tools in order to develop local mobility policies, particularly in rural and peri-urban. Peri-urban is very important areas, and automation can also contribute to this. And the third reason is the fact that all our AV strategy is based on the concept of use cases and services, use cases. And then all our technical and market analysis converge. Of course, individual cars and logistics are well taken into account, but all these analysis converge in the fact that public and shared transport must be really in the forefront of the agenda. Why? Because they are the more mature and the more promising type of application. This with, by the way, the very important factor of a good public acceptance. So these are our reasons. I come now, it will be my second point, to our regulatory framework. This framework is totally co-constructed, co-built between the private and the public sector. We are lucky enough to have a very wide and structured ecosystem, vehicle on the software manufacturers and suppliers, global leading transport operators, organized local transport authorities, as I said, road operator and suppliers, telecom operators and suppliers, and so on. So our strategy is well the result of both of a combination of a strong political will at the level of President Macron and a very dynamic ecosystem. Let's come to the facts. We have set a regulatory framework for experiments back to 2015. And it had been graded year after year, especially in 2019, by allowing experiments without an op on board, of course, very important, and clarifying the responsibility regime between the system and the driver when you have one on board, still during experiments. And it is in this framework that we had so many shuttle experiments, including, of course, quite a number of them operated by Navia. Now we decided this year to go beyond experiments with a fresh new law, very fresh new, as it was decided by the government, in fact, last month on April 14th. And this new law sets up for the permanent regime, not for experiments, three things: responsibility principles for the driver and the system, high-level safety requirements for the system, and safety demonstration and authorization processes for automated system with no op on board. And of course, everybody knows that this step of the non-op services will be the most important. This regulatory frame will definitively enter into force in September 22, which allows safety guidelines to be well set up in details, once again in collaboration with the private sector. We consider that the international panorama, referring to the UNECE, was clear enough in terms of the definition and concepts to build such a national network, with due protection, of course, between European, national, and local service approvals. My last words will be just an introduction about what we are waiting from Europe and from the Commission. As it was said by Monsieur Le Cornec, it is so important, of course, to have a united market and to be aware of the risk of fragmentation. We think that the Commission should go on to keep pressure on the UNECE agenda, because vehicle type approval should be in the long run the basis of all our safety regulations. So please, I say that to the representative of the Commission, keep this pressure. Second, we have the question of interoperability of V2X communication. In the past, the Commission had dedicated very useful and interesting resources for CITS. And now this must be expanded, first to a wider range of use cases, and second to all sorts of technology, including, of course, 5G. Well, I have two concerns. I must say I have two concerns about EU Commission involvement, which is so important, and we discuss that very often with Tobias, and we have in mind to propose commonly a clear German-French position. My two concerns are the following. The first one is about vision. We have on the table a sustainable and smart mobility strategy issued last December, including more than 80 actions. Then we have another stream of actions coming from the European Digital Agenda, with some items such as platforms regulation and AI, which have or could have important impact of regulation for our sector. So we need a clearer picture of what, why, and when the European agenda will address precisely and clearly for all actors, private and public, these issues. And my second concern is about the into force of CCAM partnership, because of course it is very important versus the international competition to go on with research and innovation in this type of partnership. And once again, it is not so clear what will be the priorities and in which type of framework we could go on with this type of very important program. Of course, I'm confident because I know that the Commission in the past, with the help of the member states, succeeded in many interesting steps for mobility and for technology. But this morning I wanted to say these two concerns and to say also how important it is to have common approaches between Germany and France, and also common approaches between the private and the public sector. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Mrs. Idrac. Okay, let's go straight on with Mr. Miethaner from to give us the German perspective.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to introduce the activities of the German government in the field of autonomous driving. We are convinced that the digitization of transport system has enormous potentials for our society. And this applies especially for autonomous and connected driving. I think we regularly tend to also see very much the risks of new technologies. In this field, we are very much convinced that the chances very much prevail the risk, and therefore we are very supportive as a federal government. There are several reasons why we think this technology is so important. Anne-Marie Idrac already mentioned some of them. Mature autonomous systems, of course, will improve road safety because we can reduce human errors. It offers the opportunity to improve the quality of life because in the end, it allows the consumer to spend the time in car for meaningful activities. You do not have to watch the traffic all the time. And of course, it also contributes to less congestion and therefore less emissions. I also want to address the social dimension. Autonomous driving helps to sustain the mobility of the elderly people, as it allows for door-to-door transport. And these solutions also are very important for rural areas, because we see that the public transport doesn't work properly there in the urban, in the rural areas. And therefore this for us seems to be a very smart solution to improve the mobility situation, just to put it in that words. We also just amended the transport, the Passenger Transport Act to allow for pooling and so on. And we think that as soon as we have autonomous vehicles really in public transport, this will be a boost for autonomous driving. So, as I said, the German government is very supportive of autonomous and connected driving. First field of action is, of course, research and development. Only the Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure invested more than 200 million euros in the last years, and similar sums have been invested by the Ministry of Research and also the Ministry of Economics. So this is really, we really spent lots of money in this technology. And we also established digital test beds on public roads where these projects can be conducted under real life conditions. And the first and our most important national test bed was the one on the A9 between Munich and Nuremberg. But I also want to mention here on the European stage our trilateral test bed that we have initiated together with France and Luxembourg. And I think this is very important to see the international and especially in Europe, the European perspective. And I think this is a good, good moment to see that project. We also already had an ethics commission, which gave us a recommendation how to deal with the ethical problems of autonomous driving. Jean-Marie already mentioned the problem of social acceptance. We cannot underestimate that, but I think we already had some good results of this commission. But of course, in the end, the regulatory framework is very important. And as I said, we want to establish a very modern framework which is open to innovation in this field. Our first step was in 2017 when we made a law which allowed for highly automated driving, so the use of the so-called level 3 cars. And now we want, similarly to France, create the regulatory framework for autonomous driving without any driver, or also security driver, and on public roads, so not for testing purposes, but really for a regular use on public roads. Today, the autonomous cars are not able to drive on every road in the transport system. So therefore, our draft law allows for the use on dedicated roads, which have been approved by authorities. And the law will cover a wide range of scenarios. Mainly, of course, we think of people movers, so the shuttle systems, which will be used for public transport on dedicated roads in municipalities. But the draft law also gives room for further scenarios like transport of goods on the last mile. I think at the moment during the pandemic, we see that Amazon and so on are very frequently used by people. So the last mile topic will be very important as well, I think. Our draft law has now been adopted by the cabinet in February, and it will now be discussed in Parliament in May. And in parallel, we are in a very constructive dialogue with the European Commission. Thank you for that at this opportunity. And our impression is that we get a very positive feedback from the Parliament as far as we perceive it right now, and also from our Länder. They already gave their statements with regard to our draft law. And they had many questions, but in the end, the overall feedback was very positive. And also our Chancellor herself is very interested in this legislative project. So we are very interested how the debate is going on in the next weeks and months. Of course, now it is also important that the companies develop the technology as well as the use cases. And against this background, I'm very happy that we see these activities of Navia and ZF Friedrichshafen to bring autonomous cars on the roads. But still, this law only provides an interim solution. Where cars are manufactured or being used cross-border, we of course need international and European provisions. And as Germany, we have a high interest in creating such harmonized rules. And therefore, we very much welcome the activities of the European Commission in this field. And in my perception, the Commission is really working on this topic now with a very high intensity and also priority. So we very much welcome that. And we are very much willing to bring in the first experiences with the German national law to contribute to good European solutions. And I can assure that Germany will support the Commission as good as we can to develop common European provisions. So we are ready to go now, but we think that in an international comparison with all the regulatory activities in Germany, in France, but also in Europe, of the Commission in comparison with Asia and America, I think we are in a leading position when it comes to the regulatory side. So not only in Germany, also in France and also in Europe. And we have the chance now to get on quickly. So thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Great, thanks very much, Dr. Miethaner. Okay, well, that's a perfect segue into our Commission speaker. I got it slightly wrong before. It's actually Joanna Sikowska from DG Grow will be giving a short speech, and then Mr. Lagrange will be taking part in the panel discussion. Joanna, I'm told that you're already online, although I can't see you on. You're there. Hello there, welcome.
Yes.
Hi, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, and very sorry for confusion, because indeed we had to adjust our participation very last moment. So my apologies for not being clear about the role that we take in today's conference. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a privilege and honor to discuss the topic of automated public transport with distinguished guests. And I feel already compelled to address a few comments that were made by previous speakers in their introductory speeches, and they are very relevant and very important for the discussion. So I'll come back to a few points that you made. I think it's fair to say that automated public transport and certain applications, they do have a very transformative potential for mobility as such. They are important for a green and for automated agenda of the Commission, of the EU. And I think there's one more aspect that we sometimes do not talk about, which is transformation of the value chains, so competitiveness angle. And that's something very, very relevant and what would need to be discussed. You have all known very well that automotive sector has been undergoing twin transformation, or maybe actually never even more than twin for quite some time. And we are talking about Green Deal, which sometimes overshadows automation. But if you look at potential growth potential along 4 axes of the transformation, so automation, connectivity, mobility services, and clean technologies, actually the greatest potential for growth resides with automation. Today we are talking about the global market of 46 billion, which is likely to grow in the next 7-10 years to 470 billion. So there's a lot to tap into. And we already see automation becoming part of life with certain applications of level 1 and 2. We expect that by next year we'll have some limited applications of levels 3 and 4 on the highway. And by 2030, that levels 3 and 4 automation will become commonplace. So this is the time horizon, or even though we have to be careful about saying what will happen when, because we have heard many announcements before that didn't even materialize at a given moment. But nevertheless, I think the trend is pretty clear. We have a strong automotive industry. We have our automakers are world leaders when it comes to automation level 1 and 2, and they are also at the forefront of more advanced levels of automation. And what is equally important, particularly for the topic of today's discussion, it's very flourishing market of startups active in applications such as shuttles. So we have ZF, we have Navia, we have Next, we have EasyMile. And that is a big promise that indeed EU will play an important role on this growing automated transport market. Now, it is still a topic that faces many challenges, technical, regulatory, and financial. And that's why we, as the Commission, are trying to have this holistic look at what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. We have presented already 3 years ago a strategy for connected automated driving. 3 years sounds like a very, very distant era now, because changes are so quick that it's maybe not appropriate to talk about what we did in 2018, but we believe that the principles are still valid. And we have reiterated them with our smart and sustainable mobility strategy, which indeed indicates 2030 as the year where automated driving will be a commonplace. And maybe let me refer to the point made by Madame Idrac. I think you're right. We need a vision, and we need a coherent vision. So the way we design our policy documents, we try to make sure that indeed we are taking all the threats together. We have one more additional guarantee that things will go in one direction and consistently, because we have a commissioner, one commissioner who is responsible for internal market, for connectivity, and for automation. So I think we have all a tool in our hands, and certainly this is what we are going to pursue. So it is not about strategy, it's not about writing policy documents, about doing things. So what we have been doing, I think you mentioned yourself, that there's been a lot of money that has been allocated to automation under Horizon 2020, even more will be allocated in the context of Horizon Europe. We have put in place a SICAM platform that looked at the interplay between research and testing. And finally, we are now at the stage of making sure that research applications and testing will find its way to real life. What is a prerequisite for this happening in a correct way, or at least one of the prerequisites, is the sound legal framework. You said it both. You've been working on, Germany and France have been working on the rules for deployment of automated vehicles, and we certainly are very pleased to see such developments. But you will not be surprised if I say that if we want to be successful, we need to have one common coherent framework. It's very difficult to operate within 27 different regimes. Well, maybe not 27, maybe there wouldn't be as many, but the point is that we need to have one common basis that would ensure that the single market is functional. And we have to have it now. So we have started working on a specific legislation for automated shuttles, and my colleagues Anthony will tell you more about it. And not only this, we have a very strong legal basis for working on automated features, which is general safety regulation that already regulates features such as automated braking, speed adaptation, lane keeping. We have looked into cybersecurity rules. We are looking now at event and data recorders. So we have a whole plethora of regulatory solutions for putting in place automated driving. And we are now specifically developing the rules for automated shuttles. So we believe we are very much on track, and we would like these rules to be applicable as of July next year. So I will maybe finish with echoing what has also been said before. it is all very good and indispensable to have the components that I mentioned. So research, testing, deployment, regulatory framework. But of course, it will take us nowhere if we will not have a public buy-in. So we are very, very aware that we have to have people who will want to use these applications, who will want to, who will support automation. And we actually think that with automated shuttles, with robotaxis, there is a big chance for us to make sure that automation will gradually be a concept that will be accepted publicly. We believe that if we can offer a product which is safe, which is convenient and accessible to broad public, that will greatly facilitate public acceptance. So we also consider this while developing the framework and putting in place the supportive measures in order for automation to be a commonplace. I will maybe finish by saying that we do recognize that this is not the work that can be carried out exclusively by the Commission or exclusively by the Member States or only by the industry. I think vision, we have to have a common vision, but we have to have a common implementation strategy. We all have to do it together because the task is simply too big. So we are extremely happy to have the discussion with you today, to see how you see our role, us to tell you what we could gain from your experience. And well, we are at your disposal for any further conversation on the topic. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much, Mr. Koska. Great. Now I see we're going to go over to the panel discussion, and I see that Mr. Ertug, are you already on the call?
Yes, I'm already here.
Oh, great. Hello, welcome. Thanks very much. I'm just going to quickly introduce you, and then I'm going to ask you to give us your view on behalf of the Parliament, but maybe also your individual view on the potential of automated public transport. If I just quickly introduce you, you're a German S&D MEP, member of the Transport Committee and rapporteur on mobility. So eminently qualified for today's discussion. So if I didn't get anything wrong, Mr. Ertug, I'd like to invite you to give us your thoughts on the potential of automated public transport and the initiatives that we've been hearing about from our speakers so far.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. First of all, it's interesting to listen to experts when it comes to public transport. I just want to mention that I was the MEP in the Parliament who founded and moderated the Driving Future platform in the previous term. That was a time where the average politician was not able to ride automated driving, but we already did that at that time and tried to connect the political area with the industrial area. It does mean the European Commission plus the Parliament plus the industry. And I have learned so many things within the 9 series what we did at that time. Connected automated driving, I think it will be the future. We won't stop that anymore. When we look to the difficulties in our mobility, we see we have a periphery and we have dense populated conurbation urban areas, and the most pressure is on the urban area. That does mean the people. And I think I'm a good example for that. I represent Bavaria, and Bavaria is not only Munich and Nuremberg and Augsburg and so on. We also have rural areas where you can see the difficulties. And with this automated driving and the connected driving, I'm sure we could overcome a little bit the gap. The pressure on the big cities could be a little bit stretched, and we could also support the rural area by this technology. When it comes to public transport, and I'm always saying that the public transport in any case, and I think this won't change in 100 years, will be the backbone of the transport and of mobility, in particular in the big cities. And what I can tell is the European Union and the European Commission tried several times to take up this topic with different legislations. And I don't want to criticize the European Commission, and I'm well known that I'm not always a big fan of the European Commission's policy. Don't understand me wrong. I like them, but sometimes they are too much politician rather than executive. Therefore, in that topic, I'm sure that the European Commission did a very good job. And now in the next years, we have that also in front of us. We have that in front of us, and we have to find ways, in particular after this Corona crisis, in particular on the financial side. We see that the public transport companies, they are under pressure, and the financial pressure cannot be taken away without support by the political, by the legislators. This is in a nutshell that what I want to say, but I'm more interested in a discussion later on. And thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be with you together.
Great, Mr. Idrac. Thanks very much. I think I'd like to go next to give to Mr. Mohammed Mezghani, who's Secretary General of UITP, the International Public Transport Union. How do you and your organization see the potential of automated public transport, Mr. Mezghani?
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Navia, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be in this session. I think one lesson we have learned from this pandemic is and what we realized, especially during the lockdown periods, it's the space used by cars, or I would say the space wasted for cars. And I think this is a key aspect in mobility and in urban transport. In addition, of course, to having clean and green mobility, in addition, of course, to the very important issue of safety not just of the people in the car or in the vehicle, but also safety of those people, pedestrians and cyclists, and also the accessibility and the social inclusiveness of the mobility. And when we look to this issue of space, we realize that we need to use this space differently, that we need to use the space to move people and not to move cars. And then if from this perspective, it's important that the autonomous vehicles are integrated with public transport, with mass public transport. And I'm happy to see the French approach of public and shared, because this is exactly what our vision in UITP, that it's not about just removing the driver from the cars, because if we do that, then it will grow traffic, it will create uses of cars even without no one on board, and so it will create a new traffic, and this is what we want to avoid. And that's why it's important that these autonomous vehicles are shared and on demand and complementing mass public transport. It's a way to have mobility, not just, or public transport, not just from station to station, but from door to door. And we have the opportunity with autonomous vehicles and with the autonomous driving to have this door-to-door mobility system. And we can come back later if you want on the benefits that this could bring. But this is really our vision of expanding the scope of public transport beyond mass transit by integrating autonomous shuttles, autonomous vehicles, shared vehicles, and on-demand vehicles in the public transport scope.
Great, thanks, Mr. Mezghani. If I can go next to you, Mr. Goleski, Torsten Goleski, from Head of Autonomous Mobility at ZF, to give us the sort of industry and the tech provider perspective. We've been focusing on driverless shuttles, but how do you see the market for automated driving developing? And what are the business opportunities for a company like yourself or for other European companies on a global scale?
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon, for the question. So good morning, everybody, from my side. First of all, let me thank you to Mrs. Idrac and Mr. Miethaner for the initiative to regulate autonomous shuttle legislation, and also thank you to Mrs. Sikowska and Mr. Ertug for the words, which are very promising words. And also with the latest statement from Mr. Miskani, I think it's very important to understand what's going on now. We have all together the possibility to shape a future urban mobility of the future in a totally different way. And exactly what Mr. Miskani said, it's not about moving cars, it's moving people. And the expectation of moving people is that it's convenient, it's safe, it's driven by clean energy, and we want to save time. It doesn't really fit to the expectation of the younger generation that they stand still in the congestion with an automated car. They want to save time. They just want to have mobility. And we have the possibility now with autonomous shuttles to transform. And that was, I think, Mrs. Sikowska mentioned that we can transform our industry and we can transform our mobility in urban areas of the future with autonomous shuttles. And it's also transforming a value chain. And so from the technical perspective and from the business perspective, so far we have, and the colleagues from Navia did it as well, made huge progress over the last years. We matured the technology, we matured the sensors, and we all took an approach also which makes a technical maturity by leveraging what we have all learned from the automotive industry over the past years in developing the ADAS systems. And that's the reason why we are using, for example, in shuttles, automotive graded components and set a standard which is well known today. On the other hand, we have, for example, if you look what the CF is operating or is operating with together in Rotterdam already in the third generation, since more than 10 years, we are operating automated shuttles without a safety driver to connect a living area and an industrial area to the mass public transportation system. And thank you, Mr. Miskani, for your approach. Yeah, we need to connect automated shuttles with the mass transportation system, and that is what urban mobility of the future should look like. Yeah, and then we can open up, in my point of view, a huge new way of automated transportation by shuttles, and that drives also our industry, that drives new potential of revenues, that also will come up with an increase of new possibilities to create jobs also for a lot of people, because just think about these automated vehicles need to be maintained, yeah, in order to work 24/7. Yeah? And so I really want to promote that we have all together here a huge opportunity to shape urban mobility of the future for the industry, for our citizens in Europe, yeah? And to come up with a new transport system which also will set a standard all over the world.
Great, thanks, Mr. Galeski. Madam Idrac, if I could come back to you. So we've heard from Ms. Sikowska in the Commission. From what she was saying, is the Commission going in the right lines for you? And they have a very broad vision as well, not just about the type approval issue, but
yes,
a very broad framework for the future of automated driving. Do you welcome what Ms. Sikowska was talking about?
Yes, it was really very, very interesting, and I must say interesting by itself as a Commission commitment, and interesting as so well aligned with what we are doing with Germany and other countries. So really very interesting, and as you said, the wide range, because we all have, of course, in mind the investment in R&I and innovation. As Tobias mentioned, for Germany, we have also, of course, an important program dedicated to automated vehicles under the umbrella of all our innovation and development programs for cars, because cars, we say that will be green, connected and shared. These are the three words, and these are the words we use for our investment in technology programs. Then we have all the regulation and of course the industrial aspects. So really very very interesting, and thank you very much to the Commission, and also to what Mr. Ertug said for the Parliament. It is a well good beginning of the day when you see all these different people sharing globally the same type of vision.
Thank you, Madam Idrac. Mr. Miethaner, a lot of the speakers have emphasized the word shared, but maybe it's me and my poor hearing, but did you emphasize the word shared? Is shared transport also at the center of your vision?
Yes, of course. I think I mentioned so shared mobility, of course, is for us a very important aspect. I mentioned our Passenger Transport Act, for example, and the pooling systems that we want to take forward and so far. And so I think this is the future of transport. And when we talk about autonomous public transport, this is basically the same, because what we are regulating with passenger transport today is autonomous transport in the future. And I think one of the questions that I read was about, well, will it actually reduce the cars that we have on the streets when we bring forward that technology, and when we make sure that the regulatory basis is made? I think this will be the case, because if you have the opportunity to get from door to door with cars which are not your own, it will be less interesting to have your own car, and you will make use of these public transport systems and autonomous vehicles, and therefore I think it will be a good contribution to have less cars on the street. You will have cars which are driving 80% of the time and not 5% of the time a day, and therefore I think it will be a contribution so far.
If I may say a word on that point, what Tobias said at the moment is very interesting, is the fact that it's not autonomous vehicles by themselves per se which can produce this type of positive effect. It is the way they are used, the type of policies they are integrated in. That's why we think with other countries that it is very important to have local authorities implied in not only in the use cases, but in the use of these vehicles and new services. And that is why it will be a part of national and local regulations, because of course each country has its own specificities, its own local organization and so on. So as the lady from the Commission said, we have technology, and we also have all these aspects in order to have a real effect, which are not only technical, only regulation, only social, but a compilation of all that.
Okay, just a question.
Simon, just once, and I think just to react on what Mr. Miethaner has said, I think the reduction of cars should not just be a consequence, it should be an objective that we clearly have, because if we keep increasing the number of cars, our cities will collapse. So it should be really the objective and the target that we have targets to reduce the number of cars. I think it's essential.
Okay, great. We have some questions asked by members of the audience. Quite a provocative one about why the French and German legislation maybe wasn't better coordinated. But I suspect the answer, I don't know, Mr. Miethaner and Mr. Idrac, if you want to address that, but presumably that's why you're also pushing for EU level regulation to avoid the patchwork and fragmentation. But do you want to just answer that comment that the French and German approaches weren't coordinated? That's come in from Mr. Tobias Reich.
Yes, of course. I don't know, Marie.
Please go. Please go.
First. Okay. So, I think it's we are in a good contact, as you see, France and Germany, and so it's not that we have made up completely different law, but I think it's quite similar. But in the end, we have different players in our legislative procedures. We have different stakeholders. We have to integrate in the discussion. So I think it's, of course, it's in the nature of the procedure that we will not have exactly identical provisions, and that's the reason why we think it's very good that the Commission is pushing the topic now and tries to get harmonized solutions. The question is always, can we make a first step, which necessarily means that we have not a very broad, completely harmonized solution, or are we waiting until we have this very broad consensus, which we will have which we will need for European solutions? And I think it was good to do the first step now, to make a proposal and to get on quickly in Europe. And as I said in my statement at the beginning, this is an interim solution. What we are doing, what France is doing, and we think it will be good if, on the basis of our experiences, then the Commission can make up a harmonized regulation. I think that's good. Commission is underway, and we are trying to give input of our experiences.
Okay, Madam Idrac, do you want to come in, or has he said everything?
Well, just I could say the same. Just a reminder about the role of UNUC regulations for vehicle types, and also the fact that we must have a common basis, as it was said before, and then for countries which are interested and which are ready, the possibility to move on. And I can give two examples of why it is well, just a fact to have a national regulation on the basis of a common approach. The first is about accountability and about insurance issues. In each country, we haven't the same type of concept for insurance. And of course, responsibility is very, very important for the development, including the acceptance of this type of, well, it is different in each country. And the second example is about local organization. It is not the same in each country. And the land regulation, the use capacities should be partly designed and decided by local authorities. That's why it is a little complicated, but such is life. It is really necessary to have this international framework, European dynamic basis, and local or national part of regulation.
Okay, thanks, Madame Idrac. I'd like to come back to Mr. Ertug. You've had a chance to listen to some of the views. Are you also happy with the direction that the policy development is going? And are the emphases in the policy right? I mean, is there sufficient focus on mass public transport, but also technological development and the business aspects, the future employment development? What do you think? Is it a balanced approach?
So it sounds not bad. It sounds not bad, but the detail lays in the evil, as always, and we have to take care on the European level, in particular. Let me say it like this: we have to take care on the future targets. We have other challenges in front of us as we had 10 or 15 years ago. Therefore, it sounds not bad, and I'm always very happy that all the experts are around us. But I would say mainly yes. But as I said, the evil lies in the detail, and we have to take care of the position of the European Commission. We need studies, we need impact assessments, and we have to include all the different institutes who already made dozens of studies, in particular in big cities. I would say yes, but that does not mean that I'm absolutely 100% happy with that, what has been said.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. I want to ask another question about sort of the global situation, and whoever wants to come in on this is welcome to do so. Where is the European sector and European businesses in relation to their global competitors and other jurisdictions such as the US? Are we lagging behind, or are there some areas of leadership? Who would like to talk about that? I'm thinking it might be one for you, Torsten.
Yes. Let me step in here. So I think we have a good position currently in Europe. We have already seen a lot of initiatives. We have seen test drives, but we have already, as I already mentioned, operational shuttles in public transportation since more than 10 years. However, and it just came out of the impression of the Auto Shanghai, which is currently in China. All the other regions in the world are also moving fast. And just see what happens also in the United States with a lot of funding. But I see a huge opportunity. So we have a lot of experience. We have a strong technology in Europe spread over the whole region with companies with a lot of long-lasting experience in automotive. So we are not working on a startup technology. We are working on solid technology developing the automotive industry. And I think that is important. And we need to join forces. We need to help the cities to deploy autonomous shuttles, to come up with urban mobility systems. And it must be a joint approach between the industry, between the cities, and the legislation thing. And one thing which is really important to me is, I think the necessity to have a legal framework in the European Union also helps us to set a minimum of standards for safety of these autonomous shuttles. I do not want to have startup technology rolling out with laboratory ECUs, and transporting people. And if something happens, then we get also bad reputation on the overall approach, which is a huge and important approach for the future of mobility in urban cities. And so it would be good to leverage the strengths of the European industry and the technology we have to set these standards and make an ability to roll out this public transportation concept here in Europe. And we can be really at the forefront, but we should use this advantage, but all the others are catching up.
Great, thanks. We had an interesting question come in via the Q&A function from a Mr. Remy de Keister, saying, if I can paraphrase, when do you think we're going to see widespread automated vehicles in, let's say, European cities? Joanna Sikoska talked about 2030 as the year of automated driving. To all of our panelists, how long do you think it will take for automated vehicles, driverless vehicles, to be a common sight on our streets? And that's open to anyone who'd like to comment.
Decades according to use cases. In very next years for vehicles on dedicated lanes, and for shared and public transportation or complements to public transportation. This will be in coming years. We'll go from the steps now we are experimenting, then we'll go to pilot, and a few years after we'll go to scaling and development. For logistics, I think that it is coming quite rapidly, especially in ports, and also for the last mile delivery. For individual cars, I think that we are going to automatization more than autonomization. So it will be more and more easy to drive, but it won't be really autonomous before decades. And even in the States, let's say that now, that maybe level 5 will be in dreams.
Yeah, good. Anyone else like to come in on this? I'd like to invite actually Mr. Lagrange from the Commission, who haven't spoken in the panel discussion, to come in either on this or any of the things that we've discussed so far. Mr. Lagrange, are you still there? Can't see you, but hi there. Would you like to come in on some of these issues?
Yes. So thank you for giving me the floor. Anthony Lagrange from DG Grow, team leader on automated connected driving. I think I take the discussion relatively positively. I see that people are quite aligned, and I mean, even what I heard about the French German initiative, I think it's still very much under the making. So it should be clear to people. So it's still under the making. So I think we are pretty much aligned in terms of calendar and in terms of objective. And I mean, the Commission cannot harmonize everything at European level, and for sure some issues need to be dealt locally. But I just wanted to stress on the shuttle use case, because in my view, and that's why we launched some initiative on this use case, is that I see it very much as a European product. So we have a lot of companies in this field, and we are seeing now the crossroad of moving from testing to commercial applications. So it's really the time for Europe to push on this use case. I think it was mentioned by the colleagues from industry, or others are not standing behind, but this product really started in Europe, and we have to make sure that we take the lead on this market. So for sure we will continue to push on that. And for sure, I think it was mentioned by France and Germany, we need to ensure that public policies ensures that these products delivers what we expect from them in terms of improving the life of citizens. So once again, I see pretty much alignment amongst the different participants, and I think we should definitely push this use case further at European level about shuttles. Thanks.
And just to follow up on that, Mr. Lagrange, so several of the speakers have talked about public acceptance. I mean, I presume driverless shuttles, one of the key tests or one of the key challenges will be to build public acceptance for the next generation of automated transport. Is that how you see it? I mean, if people get used to seeing driverless shuttles on their streets, they will feel reassured that they're safe. So it's very important element, a building block for public acceptance. Is that how you see it?
No, for sure. I mean, this one is really a kind of chicken and egg dilemma, because for me, how we build public acceptance is by using these vehicles on a daily basis. So getting used to these vehicles, and for that we need to have more vehicles on the road. So once again, moving from testing to this more commercial application, and at the same time, I guess industry also needs to have more vehicles on the road, so that they can make progress on the technology and build on public acceptance. So really, I think that the main message from this morning I get is that yes, let's move from experimentation for commercial services, and let's accompany that to ensure that citizens get what they expect.
Okay. Just on public acceptance, Mr. Mezgani, do you see that as a problem and as a major challenge from the system operator's point of view?
You know, I mean, the public acceptance of automation in public transport is not really an issue, because public transport has a long experience in operating autonomous vehicles, autonomous metros, I mean, since the 80s. And so it's a logic continuation of what it is already taking place in public transport. And especially, as it was mentioned earlier, I mean, in dedicated lanes. And this is where autonomous vehicles will be first, let's say, publicly implemented. It will be in dedicated lanes, and there is a logic that it starts with public transport. So I don't think there will be an issue. Of course, certainly we will start operating those vehicles with someone on board. There will be someone on board in case of emergency, and then progressively they will become fully autonomous with and unmanned vehicles. So I don't see an issue. It's a question of time. It's a question of showing these experiences in real life at large scale. And we have already since the 2015, 2016, a number of experimentations in Lyon, in Rennes, in Switzerland, in Paris La Défense, etc. So number of experimentations that offer the possibility to people to discover the autonomous buses or autonomous shuttles.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much, Mr. Mezgani. I'm just going to take, we're in the final 5 minutes before we go to concluding remarks. I'm just going to try and tackle a few more questions. One is specifically to you, Mr. Ertug. We have one person following saying that your Driving Future platform was very useful. Are you planning to relaunch it, restart it? And then just for our French and German representatives, there are questions about the cross-border aspects of some of your initiatives being limited. And presumably the answer there is, of course, the EU-level harmonized approach that you've been talking about. But Mr. Ertug, on your Driving Future initiative, any plans to relaunch it?
Yes, so far good news. It's already finalized. We have the new concept on our desk, but the problem is the pandemic. We've been already ready for 1 year now, but after the pandemic, we will come up with a new model, with a new concept, and I'm sure all the stakeholders will be surprised what we will present them. Yes, in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. Madam Idrac or Mr. Miethaner, do you just want to talk about the challenges for cross-border projects that you've been involved in?
Please, Tobias.
Well, I just could say it's, of course, it's our aim to get this cross-border testing on as quick as possible. But as I said, we set up the trilateral testbed. I think Mrs. Rösler said that there has to be, still be done some improvement to get it, to get things run. But we are doing our best to get on and to also give some input for the European legislation and so forth. Great.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay. We've kept well to time. And I think I've dealt with all the questions that we had identified and many that had come in from our audience online. And thanks to the audience for being so involved and being so interested. I think I will now hand over to Olivier Lecornec from Navia to make some concluding remarks. Olivier.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for this exchange. As we can see, EV shuttles are level 4 for public transport are here today. A lot of work is done on the legal part. Harmonization is needed, and an action plan to support EU industry is to be set as discussed if we want to stay as world leader. We can also see that technology is advancing quickly, as ZF highlighted, especially with Rotterdam applications. At Navia, for example, today we are switching from implementation to deployment in several cities. In Saint-Quentin-en-Yvelines, a city with more than 150 employees coming per day, one of the biggest PTA in France, IDFM inaugurates a new bus line with only EV shuttle driving around. This is to complement the current public transport system and get employees for the mass public transport to their work. It's exactly what explained Mr. Mezgani at the beginning. It's a question of moving people and providing the good service for the use case of service and the good for the citizens. Exactly the same as Mr. Miethaner explained, we have to reduce the space taken by unused car in the city. We are not waiting for robot taxis. We are not, which may arrive in 10 or 20 years, I don't know exactly. We are here to provide the best services for the citizen in the early next years. All EU actors on the heavy shuttle are facing these state challenges and rising the maturity of the technology. At the same time, many cities are witnessing a shift toward public, shared and collaborative mobility and need to scale up to an automatic public transport. Both need to be supported from legal and financial point of view. We should therefore support and remain at the forefront of the transition toward greater sustainability and modern mobility system. We now foresee a need to accelerate this work around a common EU legal framework for automotive and public transport. Size the window of opportunity that recovery and resilient fund present and use other EU financial instruments to support our EU industry. And raise our heavy ecosystem to reinforce open sovereignty and strategic independence to face international competition. And we were talking just before at the US and Asia competitors. I hope we can discuss further on how to make it happen. I would like again to thank Torsten and the dev team for this event, which was a beautiful demonstration of the EU collaborations. I want also to thank all the panelists, Madame Idrac, Mrs. Sikowska, Dr. Miethaner, Mr. Ertug, and Mr. Mesgani. We were more than 200 attendees at this meeting. Thank you all for attending this event, which was a big success.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Olivier. Okay, well, you've done everything I need to do, let me thank you, Olivier, and also thank all the speakers we've had today on this very high-level panel for a very interesting discussion about a very exciting technology that I think we all hope to see far more of on our urban areas, and, as our German speakers have stressed, maybe providing transport solutions in rural areas, which are often neglected in this discussion, including in the country that I know best. Thank you all very much, and thank you especially to all the people who followed online. The numbers have really been very impressive, and it's a strong indication of the level of interest in this exciting technology. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.